So no partner yet? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. My breath caught in my throat as I looked up from my coffee cup, and there he was. Jacob. My ex-boyfriend. The same man who had walked out of my life 4 years ago because I wasn't enough for him. The cafe suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker, and every conversation around us seemed to fade into white noise. My name is Cedric. And standing there in that crowded downtown cafe, I felt like I was 19 again, broken, inadequate, and completely worthless. Jacob stood a few feet away with someone new hanging off his arm. The guy was everything I wasn't. Confident posture, designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent, perfectly styled blonde hair that caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. He looked like he belonged in a magazine spread, not standing in a random cafe on a Tuesday afternoon. 4 years ago, Jacob had destroyed me with his words. You'll never be strong enough, Cedric. Your scent is so faint that no alpha would ever take you seriously. You're just not what I need. Those words had echoed in my mind every single day since then, poisoning every moment of self-doubt, every lonely night, every time I caught my reflection and wondered what was wrong with me. And now here he was, smiling like his life had turned out exactly as planned. Cedric? Jacob's voice pulled me back to the present. Wow, it's been what, 4 years? You look exactly the same. His eyes traveled down to my left hand, searching for something he clearly didn't find. No ring, no visible mark of commitment, nothing that would indicate I belonged to anyone. His companion noticed too, offering me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Oh, sweetie, that's unfortunate. Still searching for the right one? The pity in his voice made my skin crawl. I couldn't speak. My tongue felt heavy, useless. Every part of me wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and cease existing. The familiar weight of shame settled over my shoulders like a wet blanket, suffocating and cold. Jacob reached over and squeezed his partner's hand, a gesture so casual yet so deliberate. He wanted me to see it. He wanted me to know that he had moved on, upgraded, found something better. Don't worry about it, Cedric. The right person comes along when the time is right. Maybe your scent is just too subtle for most alphas to notice. Some omegas have that problem, it's not your fault. The words were meant to sound comforting, but they cut deeper than any insult could have. He was telling me in the kindest possible way that I was forgettable, invisible, not worth noticing. My hands trembled as I reached for my bag. I needed to leave. I needed to get out of there before the tears that were burning behind my eyes started to fall. Before I completely fell apart in front of the man who had already seen me at my lowest. But then my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking fingers, and the name on the screen made everything stop. Eddie Blackwood, my husband. My secret, dangerous, powerful husband. The alpha that the entire underground world whispered about in fear and respect. The Mafia king who ruled the city's shadows with an iron fist and a cold heart. Except when it came to me. The preview of his message glowed on my screen. Where are you, baby? I'm waiting. Just those 7 words, and suddenly I could breathe again. I have to go, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. I stood up too quickly, nearly knocking over my untouched coffee. The chair scraped loudly against the floor, drawing a few curious glances from nearby tables. Jacob laughed. Not cruelly, but with that same pitying tone that made me feel about 2 inches tall. Of course. I'm sure you've got things to do. Single life keeps you busy, right? All that freedom must be nice. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just grabbed my bag and walked toward the exit, keeping my eyes focused straight ahead. I refused to let him see the tears that were threatening to spill over. I refused to give him that satisfaction. The bell above the cafe door chimed as I pushed through it, and the cool autumn air hit my face like a slap. I walked 3 blocks before I finally let myself stop, ducking into a quiet alley between 2 buildings. My back hit the brick wall and I slid down until I was sitting on the cold pavement, my knees pulled up to my chest. The tears came then, hot and angry and full of every ounce of pain I'd been holding back. 4 years. It had been 4 years. And Jacob still had the power to make me feel like nothing. My phone buzzed again, and I looked down through blurry vision to see another message from Eddie. Cedric, answer me. Are you okay? I stared at those words for a long moment. Eddie always knew. Somehow, even when I tried to hide it, even when I put on a brave face, he could sense when something was wrong. It was like our bond went deeper than just the physical mark he'd given me. It was emotional, spiritual, something that transcended normal alpha-omega connections. With trembling fingers I typed back, "I'm fine, just ran into someone from my past. On my way home now." The response was immediate. "I'm coming to get you. Send me your location." I hesitated. Eddie had meetings today, important ones with dangerous people who didn't appreciate being kept waiting. But even as I thought about telling him not to worry, about insisting I could make it home on my own, another message came through. "Cedric. Location. Now." It wasn't a request. It was a command, spoken in that tone that made even hardened criminals comply without question. But when Eddie used that voice with me, it wasn't about control or dominance. It was about protection. It was about a promise he'd made the day we got married, that he would always come for me, no matter what. I sent him my location. While I waited, I pulled my knees closer to my chest and let my mind wander back to that day 4 years ago, when Jacob had left. I remembered sitting alone in our shared apartment, surrounded by boxes of his things that he'd already packed and taken. I remembered the note he'd left on the kitchen counter. "You deserve someone who can handle your quiet nature. I need someone stronger. I'm sorry." That night, I'd cried until I had no tears left. I'd convinced myself that he was right, that I was too weak, too mild, too invisible to ever be loved properly. But then, 6 months later, I'd met Eddie at a charity gala I'd been working at as a server. He'd looked at me, really looked at me, in a way no one ever had before. Like I was the only person in the entire room. Like I mattered. 3 months after that, he'd asked me to marry him. And now, sitting in this alley with tears still drying on my cheeks, I realized something. Jacob had been wrong about me. Dead wrong. I wasn't weak. I wasn't forgettable. I was Eddie Blackwood's husband. And that meant I was untouchable. The moment I walked through our front door, the carefully constructed walls I'd built around my emotions completely crumbled. I'd held it together during the car ride home, sitting silently in the passenger seat while Eddie drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting possessively on my thigh. He hadn't asked questions, hadn't pushed me to talk. He'd just been there, solid and steady, like he always was. But now, in the safety of our home, I couldn't hold it back anymore. I made it as far as the kitchen before the sobs started. My hands gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles turning white as I tried to physically hold myself together. The tears came hot and fast, blurring my vision until the marble countertop became nothing but a watery mess of white and gray. Jacob's voice kept replaying in my head like a broken record. "Still searching for the right one? Maybe your scent is just too subtle. Single life keeps you busy, right?" Every word was a knife, twisting deeper into wounds I thought had healed. I heard Eddie's footsteps behind me, measured, purposeful, getting closer. I wanted to wipe my face, to pretend I was fine, to be the strong partner he deserved. But my hands were shaking too badly, and my breath was coming in ragged gasps that I couldn't control. "Cedric, just my name." That's all he said. But the way he said it, low and careful, like I was something precious that might shatter, made everything hurt even more. I couldn't turn around, couldn't face him, couldn't let him see me like this, broken and pathetic and proving every terrible thing Jacob had ever said about me. But Eddie didn't wait for permission. He never did. His hands found my shoulders, gentle but firm, and slowly turned me around until I had no choice but to look at him. He was still wearing his work clothes, expensive black suit, perfectly tailored to his tall, muscular frame. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it during his meetings. But it was his eyes that caught me, those piercing gray eyes that could freeze a man's blood in his veins, or melt every defense I had. Right now they were focused entirely on me, scanning my face with an intensity that made me feel exposed. "Talk to me," he said quietly. Not a demand this time, a plea. I opened my mouth, but only a choked sound came out. Eddie's jaw tightened, and I saw something dangerous flash across his features. Something that promised violence to whoever had caused this. Was it him? Eddie's voice dropped to that deadly quiet tone that preceded bloodshed. "Was it your ex?" I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. "What did he say to you?" I took a shaky breath, trying to organize my thoughts into coherent sentences. "He asked if I was still single. had his new partner with him, someone beautiful and confident in everything I'm not. They both looked at me like I was this sad, lonely omega who couldn't find anyone to want him. Eddie's hands moved from my shoulders to cup my face, tilting it up so I had to meet his eyes. "Continue," he said. My voice cracked. He said maybe my scent is too subtle for alphas to notice. That some omegas have that problem. Like there's something fundamentally wrong with me that makes me unlovable. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Eddie's scent shifted, becoming darker and more dangerous. Cedar wood burning in a forest fire. Leather stretched tight before it snaps. It was his Mafia king scent. The one that made grown men beg for mercy. But with me that scent had always meant protection. "Give me his full name," Eddie said, each word precise and cold as ice. "No." I grabbed his wrists, holding his hands against my face. "Eddie, please. He's not worth it. He's just part of my past, a painful memory that I need to forget. He hurt you. It wasn't a question. He made you cry. He made you doubt yourself." Eddie's thumbs brushed away the tears still sliding down my cheeks. "That makes him very much worth it. I don't want you to do something you'll regret because of him." Something almost like amusement flickered in Eddie's eyes. "Sweetheart, I don't regret the things I do to protect what's mine. And you," he leaned in until his forehead rested against mine, until I was breathing in his scent and feeling the heat radiating from his body. "You are mine, the most important thing I have ever owned, ever claimed, ever loved." The word love hit me like a physical force. Eddie wasn't the type of man who threw that word around carelessly. In fact, I could count on one hand the number of times he'd said it directly. He showed his love through actions, through the way he always knew where I was, through the security team that followed me at a distance, through the way he remembered how I took my coffee and which side of the bed I preferred. "Your scent," Eddie continued, his voice dropping to something softer, "is perfect. It's subtle because it's meant for me, not for every alpha in the city to chase after. It's honey and vanilla and something uniquely you. The first time I caught it at that gala, I followed you for 20 minutes before I even realized what I was doing." I stared at him, surprised. "You never told me that." I was supposed to be meeting with a senator that night, had the man waiting at a private table for 45 minutes while I watched you work, trying to figure out why I couldn't walk away. Eddie's lips curved into a small smile, rare and genuine. "You were carrying a tray of champagne glasses, concentrating so hard on not spilling anything. Some drunk businessman bumped into you and you apologized to him even though it was his fault. I knew right then that you were different from anyone I'd ever met." "Different how?" "Kind," he said simply. "In a world full of people trying to take and conquer and destroy, you were gentle, real. You didn't know who I was, didn't care about my money or my power. You just smiled at me when I asked for a glass of champagne and called me sir in this shy voice that made me want to keep you." His hand slid from my face down to my waist, pulling me flush against him. "So when I tell you that your ex is an idiot who threw away the best thing that ever happened to him, I'm not just saying that to make you feel better. I'm stating a fact. You are extraordinary, Cedric, and anyone who made you believe otherwise deserves everything I'm going to do to them." "Eddie," he kissed me before I could finish the sentence. It wasn't gentle or sweet. It was consuming, possessive, claiming every part of me with an intensity that left no room for doubt. His tongue swept into my mouth, tasting, exploring, reminding me exactly who I belonged to. One hand fisted in my hair, angling my head for better access, while the other pressed against the small of my back, eliminating any space between our bodies. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. My lips felt swollen, and I could feel the heat pooling in my stomach. "You are not weak," Eddie said, his voice rough with barely controlled desire. "You are not forgettable. You are not too subtle or too quiet, or too anything. You are mine, and I will spend every day of our lives reminding you of that fact." He kissed me again, and this time I kissed him back with everything I had, pouring all my fear and doubt and desperate need into the connection between us. His hands roamed over my body, possessive and sure, marking me in ways that had nothing to do with physical bites. That night, Eddie proved to me over and over again that I was wanted, desired, cherished. He worshipped every inch of my body, whispered promises against my skin, and showed me exactly what it meant to belong to the Mafia king. Morning sunlight filtered through the bedroom curtains, painting warm stripes across the tangled sheets. I woke up slowly, my body deliciously sore in all the right places. Wrapped in Eddie's arms, his chest rose and fell against my back in the steady rhythm of sleep, and his scent surrounded me like a protective cocoon. For a moment I just laid there, savoring the peace, then my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I carefully extracted myself from Eddie's embrace, trying not to wake him. He'd gotten home late from his meetings yesterday, and I knew his schedule was brutal this week. The man needed whatever rest he could get. I grabbed my phone and padded quietly to the bathroom, closing the door softly behind me. The screen showed a new message from an unknown number, but the content made my stomach drop. "Hey Cedric, it's Jacob. Got your number from the old group chat. Yesterday was kind of awkward, but it was really good seeing you. Want to grab coffee sometime this week and catch up properly?" My hands started shaking again. Why was he reaching out? What could he possibly want from me after all this time? The rational part of my brain said it was innocent, just an old friend trying to reconnect. But the part of me that still carried scars from our relationship screamed danger. I stared at the message for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the delete button. But before I could press it, the bathroom door opened. Eddie stood in the doorway, wearing nothing but black boxer briefs, his hair adorably mussed from sleep. Under normal circumstances I would have appreciated the view, all those lean muscles and bronze skin on full display. But right now, his expression was alert, focused, completely awake despite the early hour. "What's wrong?" he asked, reading me like always. I showed him the phone without a word. Eddie took it from my hand, his jaw tightening as he read the message. When he looked up, his gray eyes had gone cold. The Mafia king replacing the gentle lover from last night. "Block him," he said flatly. "I can't just block him." The words came out defensive, and I immediately regretted my tone. "He's connected to my old friend group. If I suddenly block him, people will ask questions. They'll want to know why, and then they'll learn you're married to me." Eddie set my phone on the bathroom counter, his movements controlled but tense. "Is that what you're worried about? People finding out about us?" "You know that's not what I mean." I reached for his hand, needing the physical connection. "Your enemies, Eddie. The people who want to hurt you. If they find out about me, they'll have to go through me first." His fingers laced through mine, squeezing gently. And I've never lost a fight that mattered. I took a deep breath, trying to organize my swirling thoughts. When we got married, we agreed to keep it secret. Not because I'm ashamed. I could never be ashamed of being yours. But because your world is dangerous and I'm a liability you don't need. Eddie pulled me closer, eliminating the space between us. "You're not a liability. You're the only good thing in my life that isn't built on blood and violence. You're what I come home to and the rest of the world wants me dead." Exactly my point. I placed my free hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong under my palm. "I'm what you come home to. But if someone targets me to get to you, then I'll paint the entire city red with their blood." He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather instead of mass murder. "Cedric, do you understand what you are to me? You're not just my husband. You're my weakness and my strength all at once. Hurting you would be the last mistake anyone ever makes." I wanted to argue, to point out all the logical reasons why keeping our marriage secret made sense. But looking into Eddie's eyes, I saw something that stopped me: absolute conviction. This wasn't a man who made empty threats or exaggerated for effect. This was the Mafia king, and he was telling me that I was under his protection whether I liked it or not. "Let me handle Jacob my way," I said carefully. "Please, trust me on this." Eddie studied my face for a long moment, and I could practically see him weighing his options. Finally he nodded. "Fine. You can handle it. But," his grip on my hand tightened slightly, "if he crosses a line, if he makes you uncomfortable even once, you tell me immediately. No trying to tough it out or handle it yourself. Understood?" "Understood." "And Cedric?" He leaned in, his lips brushing against my ear. "I don't care how connected he is to your friend group. If he hurts you again, nothing will stop me from making him here. Not friendship, not social consequences, not even you." A shiver ran down my spine. Part fear, part something darker that I didn't want to examine too closely. There was something thrilling about being loved so fiercely by someone so dangerous. Eddie kissed my temple and released me, heading back into the bedroom. I stood in the bathroom for another moment, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The man looking back at me had marks on his neck, visible evidence of last night's passion. My hair was a mess, my lips still slightly swollen from Eddie's kisses. I looked thoroughly claimed. The thought made me smile despite the anxiety churning in my stomach. Jacob had asked if I was single, had pitied me for being alone. If only he knew the truth. I picked up my phone and typed a careful response to Jacob's message. Sure, coffee sounds fine. Let me know when you're free. It was neutral, polite, giving nothing away. I hit send before I could second guess myself. When I walked back into the bedroom, Eddie was sitting on the edge of the bed, already pulling on his clothes for the day. He glanced up at me, one eyebrow raised in question. I agreed to meet him for coffee, I admitted. Eddie's expression didn't change, but I saw his fingers pause briefly on the buttons of his shirt. When? He hasn't said yet. Probably sometime this week. I want to know the exact location and time before you go. It wasn't a request. And you're taking Marcus with you. Marcus was Eddie's most trusted bodyguard. A mountain of a man who could probably break someone in half without breaking a sweat. Eddie, that's excessive. It's just coffee in a public place. Non-negotiable. Eddie stood and crossed the room to me, cupping my face in his hands. You're my husband, Cedric. That means you don't take risks with your safety, even small ones, especially when it involves an ex who clearly doesn't respect boundaries. I sighed but nodded. There was no point in arguing when Eddie used that tone. Besides, a small part of me, the part that had been hurt and humiliated yesterday, appreciated having backup. I love you, Eddie said suddenly, catching me off guard. I don't say it enough, but I do. More than I've ever loved anything or anyone. My throat tightened with emotion. I love you too. He kissed me softly this time, tender and sweet. Then he pulled back and finished getting dressed, transforming before my eyes from gentle husband to the cold, calculating mafia king who ran this city's underworld. As I watched him adjust his tie in the mirror, I couldn't help but think about the secret we were keeping. Our marriage was hidden behind legal documents and false names, protected by layers of security and misdirection. To the world, I was just Cedric, unremarkable Omega working at a bookstore and attending community college. But in reality, I was Cedric Blackwood, married to the most dangerous man in the city, and that secret was becoming harder to keep every day. 3 days had passed since Jacob's message, and I'd spent every single one of them overthinking. The coffee invitation sat in my phone like a ticking time bomb, waiting for me to make a decision. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely, to block his number and pretend he didn't exist. But another part, the part that still carried old wounds, needed closure. I needed to face him one final time and prove to myself that I'd moved on. So on Thursday afternoon, I found myself getting ready to meet Jacob at the mall's food court. It was neutral territory, public enough to feel safe but private enough to have an actual conversation. I'd chosen the location deliberately, somewhere Marcus could blend into the crowd without being obvious. Eddie had been surprisingly calm about the whole thing when I told him my decision that morning over breakfast. He'd simply nodded, sipped his black coffee and said, "I'll be nearby. If you need me, I'll know." That was the thing about being bonded to an alpha like Eddie. He could sense my emotions through our connection. If my distress spiked even slightly, he'd feel it instantly. Now standing in front of the bathroom mirror, I studied my reflection. I dressed casually, fitted jeans, a simple navy sweater. Nothing that screamed "I'm trying to impress you." My dark hair was slightly messy in that effortless way, and the faint marks on my neck from a few nights ago were carefully concealed with concealer. I looked normal, unremarkable. Just another Omega going about his day. Perfect. The drive to the mall was quiet. Marcus followed in a separate vehicle, maintaining enough distance to seem unconnected. When I arrived, the parking lot was moderately crowded. Families with strollers, teenagers clustered in groups, elderly couples walking slowly hand in hand. I made my way inside, my heart hammering against my ribcage with each step. Jacob was already there when I reached the food court, sitting at a corner table with a paper cup in front of him. He'd dressed casually too. Gray Henley dark jeans, his light brown hair styled with just enough product to look deliberately careless. When he spotted me, his face lit up with a smile that once would have made my knees weak. Now it just made me feel hollow. "Cedric." He stood as I approached, and for a horrifying moment I thought he might try to hug me. But he seemed to sense my tension and settled back into his chair instead. Man, you still look exactly like you did in college. That whole innocent vibe really works for you. I ignored the comment and sat down across from him, keeping my expression neutral. Why did you want to meet Jacob? Be direct. He blinked, clearly taken aback by my bluntness. Can't I just want to catch up with an old friend? We're not friends. The words came out harder than I'd intended, but I didn't soften them. You made that clear when you left. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe guilt. He took a sip of his coffee before speaking again. Look, I know things ended badly between us. I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I realize I wasn't fair to you back then. Wasn't fair? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. You told me I was too weak to be with you. You said my scent was forgettable. You left me for someone you barely knew because he fit your idea of what an omega should be. Jacob had the decency to look uncomfortable. I was young and stupid. We both were. But I've grown since then, Cedric. I've dated other people, experienced different relationships, and you know what? None of them were like what we had. My fingers curled into fists under the table. What exactly did we have, Jacob? Because from where I'm sitting, we had a relationship where you constantly made me feel inadequate. That's not true. You compared me to other omegas constantly. You suggested I work out more, dress differently, be more outgoing at parties. Nothing I did was ever enough for you. The words poured out now, years of suppressed hurt rising to the surface. So forgive me if I don't understand this sudden trip down memory lane. Jacob leaned forward, his expression shifting to something more vulnerable. I miss you. Okay? Is that what you want to hear? I miss the way you used to wait up for me after my late classes. I miss how you'd remember every little detail about my day. I miss having someone who actually gave a damn about me. Not just my status or connections. Then you shouldn't have thrown that away. My voice was steady now, cold even. You made your choice 4 years ago, Jacob. You don't get to come back and pretend it didn't happen. People change, Cedric. I've changed. He reached across the table like he was going to take my hand, but I pulled back before he could make contact. Give me another chance. Let me prove that I can be the alpha you deserved back then. The audacity of it made me laugh. A short, bitter sound that didn't contain any real humor. You think this is about you proving something? Jacob, I don't need you to be anything. I don't need validation from the person who destroyed my self-worth. So there's no one else? He pressed, his eyes searching my face desperately. You're really going to sit here and tell me you've moved on completely? Because I saw you at that cafe, Cedric. You looked just as alone as I felt. My phone buzzed in my pocket before I could respond. I pulled it out and saw Eddie's message flash across the screen. How much longer? I'm getting impatient. I should have put the phone away immediately. Should have kept Eddie's existence a secret for just a little while longer. But something in Jacob's presumptuous tone, in the way he assumed I'd been waiting around for him to come back, it made me reckless. Actually, I said slowly, meeting Jacob's eyes. There is someone. There has been for over a year now. Jacob's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. What? Who? Someone who never made me feel like I needed to change. Someone who sees my quiet nature as a strength, not a weakness. Someone who I stopped myself before I said too much. It doesn't matter. The point is, I'm happy. Happier than I ever was with you. I don't believe you. Jacob's voice had taken on a sharp edge. If there was really someone, you'd be wearing a ring. You'd have pictures on social media. I don't owe you proof of anything. I stood up, suddenly exhausted by this entire conversation. This was a mistake. I thought facing you would give me closure, but all it's doing is reminding me why I was better off when you left. Cedric, wait. Jacob stood too, reaching for my arm. Before his fingers could make contact, I felt it, that familiar shift in the air that meant Eddie was close. My alpha's presence washed over me like a wave. Protective and possessive and absolutely unmistakable. I turned toward the food court entrance, and there he was, Eddie Blackwood, striding through the crowd like he owned every inch of ground he walked on. People moved out of his way instinctively, some without even realizing they were doing it. His black coat moved with each step, his expression carved from ice, his gray eyes locked directly on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. This wasn't the gentle husband who held me at night. This was the Mafia king, and he'd come to claim what belonged to him. Jacob followed my gaze and went very, very still. Who is that? I didn't answer. I couldn't, because Eddie had reached our table, and suddenly the entire food court felt 10 degrees colder. Cedric, Eddie said, his voice low and dangerous. I thought we agreed you'd tell me if you needed me. My voice failed. I was handling it. Eddie's eyes finally shifted to Jacob, and I watched my ex-boyfriend physically recoil from the weight of that stare. And who exactly are you? The food court had gone quiet. Not completely silent, but there was definitely a lull in the ambient noise as people sensed something significant happening. Eddie stood at the edge of our table like a dark sentinel, radiating an authority that made even strangers nervous. Jacob found his voice first, though it came out shakier than he probably intended. I'm Jacob. Cedric and I used to date. And you are? Eddie's lips curved into something that technically qualified as a smile but held absolutely no warmth. I'm the reason Cedric doesn't need to waste his time with people from his past. The dismissal was so casual, so absolute, that I almost felt sorry for Jacob. Almost. Look, man, I don't know what Cedric told you, but we were just having a conversation, Jacob said, trying to inject some confidence into his tone. Nothing inappropriate. Just two old friends catching up. Friends don't make each other uncomfortable. Eddie's gaze flickered to me briefly, assessing. And my husband is very uncomfortable right now. The word husband dropped into the conversation like a grenade. Jacob's eyes went wide, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Around us I could see other people starting to pay attention, phones being subtly raised to capture whatever drama was unfolding. Husband? Jacob finally managed. Cedric. What is he talking about? I opened my mouth to explain, but Eddie cut me off smoothly. Exactly what it sounds like. Cedric is my legally bonded Omega. We've been married for 14 months. He extended his hand to me, palm up. Come here, sweetheart. It wasn't a request. It was a command wrapped in velvet, the kind of tone that made my Omega instincts respond before my rational mind could catch up. I stood and moved to Eddie's side, and his arm immediately wrapped around my waist. Possessive, protective, unmistakably territorial. Jacob looked between us like he couldn't quite process what was happening. But you never said anything. You never posted anything online. Never mentioned, because it's none of your business. Eddie interrupted coldly. Cedric's life stopped being your concern the moment you decided he wasn't good enough for you. That was your mistake, by the way. One I'm quite grateful for. Now wait just a minute. Jacob's face flushed red. I don't know who you think you are, but you can't what? Eddie took a single step forward, and despite the height difference not being dramatic, he somehow seemed to tower over Jacob. Can't protect what's mine? Can't remove threats to my Omega's peace of mind? Can't ensure that people who hurt him understand there are consequences? The temperature around us seemed to drop. Eddie's scent shifted, becoming darker and more dangerous. Less cedarwood and leather, more smoke and steel. It was his Mafia king scent, the one that preceded violence. Jacob must have sensed it too, because he took an involuntary step backward. I wasn't threatening anyone. I just wanted to talk to Cedric. Maybe reconnect. Reconnect, Eddie repeated, tasting the word like poison. You wanted to reconnect with the Omega you abandoned because he wasn't flashy enough for you. The same Omega you humiliated in a public cafe by implying he couldn't find anyone to love him. Did I miss anything, Cedric? All eyes turned to me. My face burned with embarrassment, but I forced myself to speak. No, that's accurate. Eddie's arm tightened around my waist. So let me make something crystal clear to you, Jacob. Cedric doesn't need you. He doesn't need your regrets, your apologies, or your pathetic attempts to recapture something you willingly destroyed. He has me, and I actually deserve him. You can't speak for him, Jacob protested weakly. Cedric, tell him you wanted to meet me today. I wanted closure, I interrupted, finding my voice. I wanted to prove to myself that I'd moved past what you did to me. But you know what? I don't need to prove anything. Eddie's right. I have someone who values me exactly as I am. Someone who never once made me feel inadequate or forgettable. Jacob's expression crumbled. Cedric, please. I know I messed up, but there are no buts, Eddie said flatly. There's no scenario where you get a second chance with him. There's no universe where I allow you to be part of his life in any capacity. Do you understand what I'm telling you? You're threatening me, Jacob said, his voice rising. You're literally threatening me in public. I'm not threatening you. Eddie's smile grew sharper. I'm explaining reality. If you continue to contact Cedric through text, social media, mutual friends, carrier pigeon, whatever, you will bitter exactly how unpleasant I can make your existence. I have resources you can't imagine and patience I choose not to exercise when it comes to my husband's well-being. The implications hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. Jacob looked at me desperately. You're really going to let him talk like this? The Cedric you knew was broken, I said quietly. Broken because of you. I'm not that person anymore, Jacob. Eddie helped me find parts of myself I'd forgotten existed. So yes, I'm going to let him protect me, because that's what people who actually love each other do. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The food court had definitely gone silent now. Dozens of people watching our confrontation with varying degrees of interest and shock. Phones were definitely recording. This would be all over social media within hours. Finally, Jacob grabbed his coffee cup and backed away from the table. Fine. I get it. You've moved on. I'll leave you alone. He looked at Eddie with barely concealed fear. Both of you. Eddie didn't respond, just watched with those cold gray eyes as Jacob turned and practically fled through the crowd. The moment he was out of sight, Eddie's entire demeanor changed. The ice melted from his expression as he turned to me, his hand coming up to cup my face gently. Are you all right? I nodded, though my legs felt unsteady. I think so. That was intense. Too intense? His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. Did I overstep? No. The word came out firm. Certain. No, you were perfect. I didn't expect you to be so public about us. Eddie glanced around at the watching crowd, at the phones still pointed in our direction. Neither did I, honestly, but when I saw him trying to touch you, trying to manipulate you into giving him another chance, his jaw tightened. I couldn't let it continue. Everyone needs to know you're taken, that you're protected, that you're loved. My eyes burned with sudden tears. Eddie, he kissed me before I could finish, right there in front of everyone. It wasn't the dominant, claiming kiss from earlier. This was softer, sweeter, full of reassurance and promise. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. Let's go home, he murmured. I think we've given the internet enough content for one day. I laughed despite myself, and let him guide me out of the food courts. Behind us, I could hear the excited chatter as people immediately started sharing videos and speculating about what they'd just witnessed. By tomorrow, the whole city would know that Cedric Blackwood was the Mafia king's husband. And strangely enough, I found I didn't mind at all. I woke up to my phone vibrating continuously against the nightstand, the screen lighting up with notification after notification. Groaning, I reached for it without opening my eyes, expecting maybe a handful of messages from concerned friends who'd heard about yesterday's confrontation. What I found instead made me bolt upright in bed. 347 notifications. Texts, social media tags, missed calls, emails. My phone had essentially exploded overnight. With shaking hands, I unlocked the screen and started scrolling through the chaos. The videos were everywhere. Multiple angles of Eddie confronting Jacob, of him calling me his husband, of that final kiss before we'd left the mall. Someone had even compiled them into a highlight reel with dramatic music, and it already had over 2 million views. The headlines were even worse. Breaking: Mafia King Eddie Blackwood's secret marriage revealed. Mystery Omega identity finally uncovered. Meet Cedric Blackwood. Viral video shows Eddie Blackwood claiming his husband in public confrontation. My hands trembled as I scrolled through comment after comment. Some were supportive, gushing about how romantic it was. Others were cruel, questioning what someone like Eddie could possibly see in someone like me. A few were genuinely concerned about my safety now that my connection to the city's most dangerous man was public knowledge. You're spiraling. Eddie's voice cut through my panic. I looked up to find him standing in the bedroom doorway, already dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, his hair still damp from a shower. He looked completely unbothered by the digital firestorm we'd created. Have you seen this? I held up my phone. Eddie. Everyone knows. My college friends, my coworkers at the bookstore, people I haven't spoken to in years. They're all messaging me. Some journalism student even found our marriage certificate and posted it online. They know everything. Eddie crossed the room and gently took the phone from my hands, setting it face down on the nightstand. I know, My security team has been monitoring the situation since 3 this morning. And you're not worried? My voice cracked slightly. Your enemies, the people who want to hurt you, they all know about me now. They know exactly how to get to you. They already knew, Cedric. Eddie sat on the edge of the bed, taking both my hands in his. I've had surveillance on you since our second date. My enemies have had your picture, your address, your entire daily routine for over a year. The only thing that's changed is that now they also know hurting you means certain death. I stared at him. That's supposed to make me feel better. Actually, yes. His thumbs rubbed circles on the backs of my hands. Before yesterday, you were a secret weakness. Someone they might have tried to exploit quietly, behind the scenes. Now, you're publicly claimed. Touching you would be a declaration of war, and no one in this city is stupid enough to start that fight. You're sure about that? I wanted to believe him, but fear still coiled in my stomach. What if? No what ifs. Eddie's voice took on that commanding edge that meant the discussion was over. I've spent the last 14 months keeping you hidden because I thought it was safer. I was wrong. The safest place for you is right beside me, where everyone can see exactly who you belong to. His words sent a shiver down my spine, part fear, part something else I didn't want to examine too closely. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Eddie picked it up, glanced at the screen, and his expression darkened. It's Jacob. He's apologizing. Says he didn't realize who I was, begging you not to let me do anything rash. What are you going to do? I asked quietly. Eddie's smile was razor sharp. Nothing. He's not worth the effort. Let him live with the knowledge that he had you and was too stupid to keep you. That's punishment enough. He handed me back the phone and I scrolled to find dozens of other messages. Most were variations of the same shocked reactions, but one in particular caught my attention from Sarah, a friend from my literature class. OMG Cedric, you've been married this whole time? To Eddie Blackwood? Girl, we need to talk immediately. I have so many questions. Despite everything, I felt a small smile tug at my lips. I think I'm going to have a lot of explaining to do. Only if you want to, Eddie said. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your private life. Our marriage, our relationship, that's ours. Let them speculate all they want. There was a soft knock at the bedroom door, and Marcus's voice filtered through. Sir, there are reporters at the gate. About 20 of them. They're requesting a statement. Eddie's jaw tightened. Tell them to leave or I'll have them arrested for trespassing. Already did, sir. They're being persistent. I watched Eddie's expression shift into full Mafia king mode, cold, calculating, dangerous. This was the man who ran an empire built on fear and loyalty, who made decisions that affected thousands of lives with a single word. But then his eyes found mine, and everything softened. What do you want to do, Cedric? This is your life too. If you want to give a statement, clear the air. I'll stand beside you. If you want me to make them all disappear, I can do that too. The choice was overwhelming. Part of me wanted to hide, to pretend yesterday never happened, to go back to being invisible. But another part, the part that had been growing stronger since I'd met Eddie, wanted something different. I don't want to hide anymore. I heard myself say, I'm tired of pretending I'm not with you. I'm tired of keeping secrets. If people know the truth, then they know the truth. Eddie's eyes searched mine. You're sure? Once we do this, there's no taking it back. You'll be in the spotlight permanently. People will judge you, criticize you, question why I chose you. Let them question, I said, surprised by the firmness in my own voice. I know why you chose me. That's all that matters. Something like pride flashed across Eddie's face. He leaned forward and kissed me slowly, deeply, a promise sealed between us. When he pulled back, his hand came up to rest against my cheek. Then we'll face them together, he murmured. But not today. Today, you're staying home where I know you're safe. Tomorrow, we'll make a proper statement. Let tonight's security reports come in first. Make sure there are no immediate threats. I nodded, relief flooding through me. I wasn't quite ready to face the cameras yet. Eddie stood and straightened his shirt. I have meetings this afternoon, but I'll be home early. Marcus will be right outside if you need anything. Don't answer the door for anyone, and if you go anywhere, take him with you. I will, I promised. He kissed me once more, quick and possessive, then headed for the door. But he paused at the threshold, looking back with an expression I couldn't quite read. I meant what I said yesterday. Eddie said quietly. Everyone needs to know you're mine. That you're protected. That you're loved beyond measure. My throat tightened with emotion. I know. I love you too. After he left, I sat in the quiet bedroom for a long moment. My phone still buzzing with messages. I thought about Jacob's pitying looks. About 4 years of feeling inadequate. About all the times I'd believed I wasn't enough. And then I thought about Eddie. About the way he looked at me like I was his entire world. About how he'd publicly claimed me without hesitation. About how he'd literally carried me out of that mall like I was something precious worth protecting. Maybe the world knowing wasn't so terrible after all. Maybe being loved by the Mafia king wasn't a weakness. Maybe, just maybe, it was the greatest strength I'd ever known.